Good evening and welcome. I'm Danny Lichtenfeld, Director of the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center. I'm so happy that you've tuned in here tonight for this walkthrough of the exhibit Expedition with John Newsom. As you can see, I'm here at the museum. John is here too, and the plan is that John's going to walk us through the exhibit, tell us all about it and the artists and the work. And then when we're done, we would love to take your questions and comments. The way you can do that is type them into the Q&A or use the Q&A or the chat buttons in Zoom to type in your questions or your comments. Or if you're here on Facebook Live, just use the comment box there and we'll be monitoring that too. The museum's wonderful events manager, Kirsten Marzi, is here with a laptop. So she's just off camera and she's keeping an eye on all of that. So she'll relay your questions and comments to us, but we're not going to get to them till the end. We'll do the walkthrough first. You can type in your questions and comments whenever you'd like at any point, but we'll get to them after the walkthrough. So before we get started, I just want to say a few quick words about John Newsom and this exhibit. John is a wonderful painter based in New York whose work is shown and collected across the country and around the world. And in addition to his painting practice, John occasionally has organized group shows of his own work and that of his peers. So John and I met a couple of years ago at an event at the Hall Art Foundation in Reading, Vermont. And soon after, John proposed this exhibit for the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center. And we loved it, loved the idea. It was just the concept of the exhibit, the artists involved, the specific work. We thought it would just be terrific. The only question was going to be how it fit in the space when it all came together. And to that end, all I can say is that we couldn't be more pleased. We're thrilled with how it all came together and with the responses we've been getting from visitors to the museum. So we're super grateful to John for the exhibit itself, of course, and also for coming up here to Vermont again to be part of this walkthrough tonight. So why don't we just head across the gallery and we'll go find John and we'll get started. Hey,
Danny, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for doing it. Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
John Newsom.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Expedition, Brattleboro Museum of Art. And let's go, let's hop in, right? I wanted to start off by introducing a little bit of the concept of the exhibition to you all. This is from an excerpt I wrote for the catalog. An expedition can take place across a room or across the world, across the expanse of the mind or the technological web. It is a simple, profound, and vast idea. To journey, to venture out, to discover the new is what we as painters strive for daily. This is the call to adventure, the starting point of inspiration and wonderment. The 17 artists in Expedition heed that call and invite you to join them on their journeys. I was inspired early on by Perry Farrell, the lead singer of Jane's Addiction, who organized the first Lollapalooza back in 1991. I was a student at the Rhode Island School of Design at the time. My friends and I would go see rock shows at a great local venue called The Living Room. Jane's Addiction, Fugazi, the Buzzcocks, Sonic Youth, the Pixies, Nine Inch Nails, Soundgarden, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. We saw so many great bands of the era play there. And in forming Lollapalooza, Farrell said his motivation was to get a bunch of his friends' bands together and rock out, including his own. It was a new model for a festival. The energy was different because Farrell came to the project as a participant as much as an organizer. I dare say he brought a certain level of authenticity to the whole dynamic. That made a huge impression on me, and it's the model I use when I organize group shows. I include myself because I am a painter. The walls are the stage and my band plays too. In this time of great social unrest, I've made a conscious effort to present work that extends beyond politics, reminds us of our shared potential, and enables us to find creative inspiration and rejuvenation in art. We need to rediscover our natural world and processes, the real landscape of artistic thought and feeling, in order to bring to light a vision for a brighter future. Expedition is dedicated in loving memory to my friend and early mentor, Malcolm Morley. Got a little choked up there, bro. No, I love Malcolm, and thank you for that great introduction, Danny. You know, the event at the Hall Foundation was for a dinner in remembrance of Malcolm upon his passing, and in conjunction with the wonderful Morley exhibition that the Halls did. So, you know, he was a big influence on a lot of us, and I'm just humbled, very grateful to be able to present a bit of a vision of these fantastic works by these amazing artists who I have tons of respect and admiration for individually. Some are personal friends, some I followed their careers for decades, some are new to me, some of the works are new to me, and as we proceed and go forward, you know, I'll try to touch on as many aspects as I can with the amount of time that we have.
Sure.
Okay,
sure.
Cool.
Can I just say before you start
Anything,
taking us around?
Sure.
I've read this so many times, and it's so awesome to hear it in your voice, like your words in your voice.
Yeah, well, you know, this is really special and unique. You know, we put this together at a very unique time that none of us are used to. I mean, we began this journey on the front side of COVID, and now we're kind of on the other side of COVID, but at least we're up here together, because everybody was in lockdown for a period when we were actually organizing this. So it's like, you know, between formatting dialogues with artists, galleries, collectors, and the wonderful staff here at the museum. I mean, from organizing, shipping, receiving, insurance, the installation team, lighting, everybody, the whole crews across the board. The team was exceptional. Thank you so much. You made it you made it a wonderful experience. And it's still a wonderful experience. The exhibition, as you know, is like moving into an exciting time of its run. We've got the early fall season coming up. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to the roster of artists here, fellow painters. We have Donald Baechler, André Butzer, and Craven, Matt Dillon, Inka Essenhigh, Torben Giller, April Gornik, Andy Hope 1930, Richard Jacobs, Michael Kagan, John McAllister, John Newsom, Erik Parker, Raymond Pettibone, Alexis Rockman, Wataru Watts, and Wendy White. I could not be more thankful to this wonderful group of exceptional artists. And those of you who are tuning in that are on this list, thank you so much. All right, I wanted to kick the exhibition off. Oh, let me say before we really start this is that, like, you know, we had floor plans sent to my studio, and a maquette was made to scale of the space. We got high-res images of all of the artworks reduced down to scale, placed within the maquette. So everything was predetermined where it would be hung and installed. And you had mentioned the question of, you know, what or how it would look in the space. Well, we took care of that for you, so you didn't have to stress.
I know.
So when it all arrived, boom, they were laid out and they went right up on the walls. And I knew that I was going to start off with Michael Kagan's phenomenal painting here as the entry point, because it is such a searing, iconic image that we as a populace who have interfaced with American culture and actually world culture since the Apollo 17 mission are used to seeing. It's registers, it's immediate. It's like, it's as immediate as Mickey Mouse or Marilyn Monroe. I mean, it's like a real, it's a kickoff painting. And it's also a painting that reflects the human form. Now, the human form is present within this astronaut outfit and the helmet, but we can recognize ourselves within that figuration. And as we proceed through the exhibition, you'll see that the focus becomes a little bit more like insightful in terms of landscapes, allusions to symbolism and signage and things like that, and not so much on the inclusion of the figure, actually. But I wanted to remind people of themselves, because the subject matter of the figure within this particular exhibition is the viewer themselves, you know, and we hear that, especially when viewing, say, abstract painting. It's like the viewer completes the experience by being the figure. So it's a reflective presentation as well, in terms of what that might be. You know, the face shield is something that we would normally see a reflection of our face in. But the way that Kagan masterfully addresses the medium of paint on this flat surface is fractured, but it's a controlled fracture. It's almost like watching, if you've ever seen a master sushi chef prepare sushi. I mean, it's just absolutely mesmerizing. And I had never seen one of Michael's paintings in the flesh. We had met socially a couple of times. We don't know each other well. Michael, if you're watching, I'm going to get over to the studio. I'm excited about it, but the scheduling's been a little hectic. But I just knew, I just had this feeling when I saw one of the paintings that the way the marks were structured, it was something I was really interested in. It was taking the pictorial through a very interesting and highly individual approach to mark making and combining it seamlessly. I mean, you can take every square inch of this painting and it's still a Michael Kagan painting. You understand? You're going to pick up on it. And what's great about seeing it tonight is that even in these areas of shadow or monochrome, you can pick up the tactility of the slight impasto by the brushwork. And that's something that kind of flattens out in reproduction, but seeing it again now, it just reiterates those early feelings that I had when I engaged with the work. So I'm very grateful to Michael for allowing us to include this piece. And it's a very generous painting. Like, I think of, I'm going to bring up two things. I mean, you're going to hear a lot of names because there's a lot of reference points. And one of them is Rauschenberg. I mean, I always loved Rauschenberg because the paintings were so generous. He's such a generous artist. It was like he gave the viewer a lot. And Kagan does that. This surface is like chock-a-block in there. You can really spend, I mean, we could spend a long time with this painting, dissecting it and whatnot. And yet it's revolving like a hurricane around a center point, this figure. And any of us, it doesn't have to be the astronaut on the Apollo 17 mission. It could be any of us behind that. It's saying it is our past, it is our present, it is our future. So I wanted to kick the exhibition off with that, saying, you know, it's a reflection of us, of the totality of a populism through a populist image. But the way in which it is created is so wonderfully individual, you know. And as we proceed, you'll notice that all of the painters in this show are very individual type painters. They're very independent. None of them are really a part of a group, you know, or a school. They are very independent, and including myself, I think I fit that. And so bringing them here together, it highlights, I feel, the uniqueness, the individual uniqueness of each artist, as well as saying, you know, it's possible for these visions to coexist through the idea of expedition. One thing I want to lay out right at the start is I do not consider myself a formal curator. I really respect curators. I came to this platform through a good friend of mine who we will be introduced to later in the tour, and through some of our early projects, this just mushroomed. And I enjoy the process. I love the fellow painters, and as I said in the statement, you know, Perry Farrell did something really interesting because he wasn't an A&R guy from the record company. He was like the lead singer of one of the wildest rock bands of the period, and he was putting this thing together. So it's an echo. And as a painter, I want to create an openness for possibilities. It's not a linear thing where there's an endpoint to expedition. It's like you're invited to go explore. You're invited to go get lost. So via Michael, let's jump into this fantastic painting by Richard Jacobs and get lost, because this thing is just a beast of a piece. And Richard Jacobs is a local artist. He's here in Vermont. We met at an exhibition of his in the city. We became friends, and I came up to Vermont, did a studio visit, and I was looking at all these other paintings he had out, but this one was tucked away behind something. It was one of those moments where you're like, what's this? Well, what's that one? Like, get that one out. And he's like, he hasn't seen this forever. Pulls this painting out. It's a 2-panel piece. We install it. I step back. I say, this is by far the strongest painting in your studio. I don't know what this means, but this has to be seen. And this is before Danny and I came up with the exhibition, but I knew once it was confirmed, this was a lead-in piece. This is one of the first pieces that was confirmed and came in as kind of a foundational painting for the show. It's the only painting that's like a real pure abstraction, if we could call it as such, because it does have this like wonderful kind of, reference to pictograms and, the quasi, amorphous renderings of, broken patterning. And, it's almost like you're scuba diving somewhere. With that, he's a world traveler. He went to Yale University with John Curran and Lisa Yuskavage and Richard Phillips. And when those painters went to New York, he went to Bali. And he stayed out in the hinterlands, and he was in India, and he was doing drawings and paintings in Jaipur. And he brought back some of the symbology of Jaipur to his studio here in Vermont, began this painting, left it dormant for a few years, was on a vacation with his wife to the Grand Canyon, was whitewater rafting on the Colorado River. It reactivated feelings about Jaipur. He started doing sketches down in the canyon, brought him back to Vermont, pulled back out the painting, and you'll see here this kind of loose printed crescent trail of white, which denotes the rapids of the river. So this is kind of signage, like early pictorial signage. So in saying that, we're picking up a thread here, okay? We're picking up a thread, and the thread is the marriage of the pictorial image with the process, and again, and that's where the painting is. That's literally where the painting is. These are still images now, because once they leave the studio and they're here in the museum, they're done. They don't move. It's the opposite sensation of scrolling through Instagram or social media, or that's becoming such a part of our lives, every day. I mean, my son, it tells me more about the computer than I'll ever know. It's just a wild thing, but it's like, whoa, stop, slow down. That's fine. That's great. Instagram, all social media, that's cool. NFTs, metaverse, cool. Not painting. Which is fine. It doesn't mean, oh, it's the new painting. No, it's not. Painting's here and all this stuff is here and it's all good. In the words of a very good friend of mine, there's enough sunshine for everyone. And that's so true. So it's this is this experience. This is why this bench is here. I mean, we put the bench here so a person can sit down, take a half hour to allow Richard's painting to envelop them and give them a journey through the process of this piece. And, a person brings to it what their experiences are, man. The paintings never change, In 100 years, this Kagan painting is gonna be that painting, It's only gonna be the experiences of, people then that know of, what that event was then, because that's actually a literary depiction of an event. This is a reflection on Jaipur and the Colorado River and, these interesting pastiches that are creating this like somewhat harmonious abstraction, you know, and we could get into abstraction, but we'd be here for like another hour. I'm trying to zip through a little bit faster. Okay, I absolutely love this painting. This is just, I was so happy that we got this painting, and special thanks to Miles McHenry Gallery for lending this work by Inka Essenhigh. You know, I kind of like started exhibiting around the same time as Inka did, and in the city, and I remember her first shows at Jeffrey Deitch, and she just had such a unique surface treatment. You know, she painted with enamel, and nobody was painting with enamel. Enamel is like, I've never painted with enamel. I'm like an oil painting guy. But the enamel, the way she was using it, she was like, almost like she was rendering it, but she was like whipping it around too. There was like a velocity to her mark, and that really, it showed such control. Like she really was like bringing in certain, you know, moves that like seemed gestural and improvisational, and yet there was a balance. Like it was very controlled. And now through the years, I mean, gosh, I don't know how long that was, 20, 25 years ago. She actually came to my studio once around that time, and we had a very energetic meeting together. And she was looking at one of my paintings, and our paintings are very different, the surface treatments, but I had a good time, you know, and I've seen all her shows. I mean, I follow her work, and, you know, just to get this wonderful piece, because she's getting, I don't want to say she's getting better, but man, she's working her ass off, it seems, and she's exhibiting like a little bit more frequently, and the amount of time and work that and craftsmanship that's going into these surfaces is just becoming, it's more. She's just putting more in there. It's like that Kagan painting. It's like, we're gonna see the artists sweat in this show. You know, they're coming to the piece, they're going back to the piece. They're coming back to, you know what I mean? There's a real conversation happening. And, you know, all that methodology aside, you can drift in this piece, you know? I mean, are we at the top of the mountain here? You know, we're in space. We're getting back to nature. We're getting into nature. We're diving into this poetic blue, you know? There's, if you zoom in here, you'll see this crescent of this moon here in this like evening scape, and it's like twilight, and yet, you know, there's luminosity. There's like, you know, details of starlight in here. It's just like, you know, it's completely alive, but in Inka's world, it's like the Inkaverse. You know, it's like the Inkaverse. I mean, these strange moments of abstraction happen here, and yet there's this gradation of color, this like light plum drifting around here. And I mean, that's not a natural form. We don't find straight lines in nature, and yet we do in her nature. And I just think, you know, the composition, spellbinding, and you can be with this piece for a long time. In fact, getting to be with these pieces again without the crowd here, like it was at the opening, you know, I'm picking up on stuff that didn't register my first few times around. But when you know, I could spend some more time with this painting.
When you contacted the artists about this show, did you ask them to point you toward works that they had done that were on point with the theme of the exhibition, or did you go somehow through their works, and like, did you ask for this painting specifically, or did Inka suggest it?
Well, I kept it pretty open, and it varied. Like with Richard Jacobs, I knew, bam, that was it. Michael, and shout out to Over the Influence as well for loaning this piece of Michael's. Michael didn't have one of these to get, but this is the one I wanted. I couldn't, and you know, again, I could spend a long time talking about each body of work, but with him, it's like, this is a particular chapter of work. It's like, there's other chapters of work. I wanted that from that. And I was okay if I couldn't get it, but if I couldn't get it, he wasn't gonna be in this, because I needed everybody's strongest thing in my mind that correlated with the vision of it.
Got it.
And he got it. And so, you know, I was psyched to get that. That was a key, but it was on loan. And then, you know, Miles McHenry, again, you know, upon your suggestion, I formed a great email dialogue with Miles, and he offered this work of Inka's.
Yeah.
And also the work of April Gornik, which we'll get to later. But so it was through certain type of dialogues with galleries, as well as artists, that we landed on pieces. I'm gonna take a second because just like thinking of the maquette, getting back to layout, you know, there's a move in this painting here, this swoop here, this blue swoop, that I loved how it picked up on this wing here in this painting. You know, these paintings just kind of felt rhythmically attached. And so, and the touch of this surface to this is like, it's like the antithesis of each other. I mean, you couldn't get a more contrasting type of surface treatment, which is good because it enhances the neighbor. You know, it like enhances the neighbor. It happened to work also because of the coloration, which stretches along the wall. But I knew immediately that this is the piece from Matt Dillon that I wanted to include in the show. And Matt, many of you will know him as an actor. He's also been a prolific artist for many, many years. He comes from a family of artists. It's something that has been with him. He goes to museums. If he's traveling on location or for leisure, you'll find him on his day off or whatnot in a museum or looking, he's like into it, you know, and he's making sketchbooks, travel logs, you know, collages. You know, a collage is a big part of his practice. And we met years ago and, but picked up like on his art through some mutual visits between both of our studios, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, we've exhibited in several really strong group shows together. And man, he's got a great body of work, and a lot of it is on paper. And he works sometimes on older papers or earthen papers, or he spends time in Italy and he'll find paper on the side of the wall and rip it off the wall, take it back, not think about it, ends up in the pile of, you know, material at the studio. And then maybe it gets pulled and finds its way into a drawing, and then drawings get collaged together. And that's how this piece was created. He's also an avid record collector of African and Cuban music. You'll see here the text. Okay, there's a few pieces that have text in the show, but similar to Michael's piece in the figure, there's not very many because I tend to shy away from text because, again, it's like, if you can't read English, you can't read the text. What's cool for me about Matt's piece is that there's like, it says Bantu U, which has this reference to African music and the diaspora of the continent. And he's spelling it more than he's writing it, you know? And I think the drips enhance that because it's a process of spelling. So if you look at that word, spelling, spell, to, you know, you have your brush, you're like, you know, it's a different type of vibe with this painting. It's like you're spelling, you're putting one in a trance, you're putting, there's a rhythmic trance to the process by the artist. You know, the viewer looks at this, it's like, you know, I imagine this as signage, you know, and I'm traveling along somewhere and I come face to face with this activated image and this singular eye, and it's like mesmerizing. It's like casting a spell. It's like this, almost like this cloaked wizardry happening with this bird. And you can hear the visual music at play, and it's like inertia takes over, and the Bantu U is defining you. It's spelling you, it's casting its spell on you. And it's also iconic. I knew immediately it was the piece for the show because it triggered like a moment of things to come, you know, a moment of things to come. And the placement in between Inka's painting And this next painting we're going to see, I just am so pleased with this. Matt was able to attend the opening, and I was thrilled that he could see it in the flesh on the museum wall. This brings us to the Matterhorn, the grandest mountain in the Swiss Alps. This painting is by one of my favorite painters in the world. He lives in Berlin, Germany. His name's Torben Giller. And man, he can paint, and they're strong paintings. And he's very consistent in these surfaces. I followed the work since his very first shows. He was in New York for many years, and he has since moved back and relocated to Berlin. And he's doing many things in Berlin. He's got an incredible work ethic, and he's also a cyclist. So he's out there like on the road, seriously, like he pairs up with cycling companies and, you know, designs, he lends his designs, his paintings to the craftsmanship of the actual bikes and the gear from these companies. And what I like about that is that it's not in an illustrative manner, you know, it's actually the form of the painting gets reactivated in a way through the form of these bikes. I mean, you know, you can see these things in museums themselves. So this is a particular motif in his work of the Matterhorn that he returns to periodically as subject matter. And it varies through these fractured tectonic planes of color to create the form of each mountain. So, you know, there's a bridge between the idea of the technological and the real. And I think that, you know, it's a very clear and concise outline for making a painting, which is very refreshing. It's got a lot of wall power. And, you know, Torben and I have exhibited in the past together when Danny and I were formulating the roster. I already knew I wanted to include Torben, and I knew immediately that I wanted some type of mountain. So I reached out to him, and we were able to get this one brought in from Berlin. Thank you to Torben and the studio for helping make the arrangements go so smoothly, especially with the challenges we were facing with international shipping and COVID restrictions and customs. We got it all here. We got it all done. Going from the angles of the Giehler to this painting by Anne Craven is one of my favorite passages between works in the show, because it's so, again, it's so contradictory in terms of the application, and yet we're in Vermont, man. It snows, right? There's like mountains, there's skiing. It's like, okay, we're starting to get into this like seasonal vibe right here now. It just is like, it's a summer show. I hadn't even really thought of it like that. Summer show, but we've got some winter scenes happening here. And so, you know, I've known Anne a long time. I think of all of the 17 artists in the show, including myself, she's the one that is closest in terms of like natural attraction of iconography as myself. It just is like, it's always been like that. I mean, I saw her first show, I believe it was at Kurt Marcus Gallery. And Anne, if you're watching, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw that show and I followed it ever since. We've been exhibiting together, and both of us paint a lot of birds, but we paint them in reference again to the process of painting. It's just like a timeless subject matter for painting in general, but we both do it in our own way. But, you know, because of the, you know, subject matter, we get, you know, her name comes up a lot. And I smile every time it does, because she's a fantastic painter. So I knew I would like to invite Anne into the show. And when I talked to her, I said, well, let's make a prerequisite, okay? Let's make an agreement that neither of us show a painting with a bird in it. And she kind of laughed, but it's true. It's kind of cool. It's like, you know, let's switch the focus a little bit. And so she was so gracious, and she offered 2 of these running deer paintings after Courbet. And I chose this one. Thank you to Karma Gallery as well. And if you just get up here on the surface, you could just, it's just like it's a massage for the eye. I mean, it's just all brush stroke. It's like a fantastic painting. It's, you know, sometimes you see images of works, you like them, and then when you get it in front of them in the flesh, it's even more so. Every piece is like that, but this one, because of the amount of brush strokes and the buildup of the strokes, it just is, it's a very luxurious touch that she has. I love the speed, the gesture, and that's another thing. It's an action sequence, you know? Some of these other paintings we've seen to date are still shots. This is an action sequence. It's frozen in time, you know? And that's unique for her. If you look through her work, a lot of the compositions are more like kind of iconic and, you know, structured there. And this is, you know, this is a little bit different, which I also like because it adds something new to it. But, you know, just this composite of marks like around here and the edge and the way we read, you know, how the blends are happening through the actual process is just fantastic. That's springs, you know, she doesn't have to hold that down like, you know, like it's rooted in the earth. It's like sprung, you know. I just think it's such a vibrant piece and perfect for the show. And they're running this way. I think they're running, they're springing, what is they doing? Into another winterscape by Raymond Pettibone. Amazing artist. You know, for those of you who are familiar with this artist's work, you'll know that he, you know, he's known for these amazing seascapes and oceanscapes and waves and surfer painting, like paintings of surfers and, you know, really drawings too, because he's such, you know, he's a draftsman. He's really like I consider him to be kind of like an underground superhero. Like he really is humanity's artist right now. I'm friends with him now, and I was always aware of his work, particularly when I was exhibiting kind of regularly in Los Angeles. Through some of the older artists that I befriended in LA, you know, Raymond's name came up again and again and again, and the work came up. And I knew of it. I was aware of it. I saw the shows, but I wasn't always so on the work because it wasn't as directly painting related. But as a draftsman and as his relationship to like, you know, literature and as a tool for his pictorial language, because he's not lining it up like A, B, C, D, E. Raymond doesn't do that. The text is as much as a mark as, say, the tree is. You understand? And it's like, and so once you get into his world, once you interface and engage with Pettibone, I mean, it is a wormhole of a universe. You go into it. It's like, and you can dwell in there. And I'm actually dwelling in there now. Raymond's son and my son are very good friends. They met, they clicked. Like this was 4 years ago already, Luke told me. And I was like, has it been that long? I can't believe that. Time flies, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a really nice rapport. And when I was sitting with him shortly after this work was confirmed for our show, I was telling him about it. I was telling Raymond, I said, yeah, we're gonna get this piece, and it's the one where the skier is skiing through a tree, and it appears like there's, you know, trails of each ski on either side of the tree trunk. So it appears that he's like somehow supernaturally skied through this tree, and the other fellow's looking at it like, what the hell is going on? And Raymond was taking it all in. He was sitting there and he was like contemplating, he's thinking, and he's like, oh yes, well, you know Sal Steinberg, right, from the New Yorker. And I said, yeah, of course. He's like, yeah, you know, and he did a museum show in Florida, I believe, with Steinberg, which makes perfect sense. And he said, that's something that he came up with in terms of an idea like a rose. He might as well have been talking about, another type of image, like Cézanne's oranges or something. Like, it was just so cool how and I'm so glad he shared that with me, because now, that's something I know. It's a piece for me. Yeah. It's like a little jewel he gave me. And I have that reading with the piece, and it's a little bit larger in scale, which I really like. Shout out to David Zwarner for, lending the works. And I say works because Raymond is the one artist in the show where I felt it was necessary to add an additional piece, because I knew I was going to highlight him on this wall, but I felt like we needed one other touchstone in order to really hold the wall. So what's cool about this painting is that, or this drawing, work on paper, whatever, is it's an earlier work. And so I'm going to tell you the exact dates here if they are. Yeah, okay, so no title, who can, ? Does, 2017 on the larger piece, and no title, parentheses, he puts his 1988. So, there's a stretch of time between these two works, which is interesting to compare and contrast, I think. And so we have, again, this image plays very well into the concept of expedition. He's just like this nature walker that comes face to face with this perched owl in the tree, but he also appears to be blind, which I find interesting. Like, the owl seems to be blind, and the guy is looking through the binoculars in a way where we don't see his eyes either. And I just think that there's an interesting relationship between that representation there and, man and nature combined in this like kind of esoteric space. And so as time goes by, I look forward to learning and spending more time with Raymond, and I encourage anybody watching this to dive into some good research about this artist, along with all the other artists, but in particular Raymond, because it's rewarding in that way. And there's a lot of books and literature involved. So that kind of completes the first half, this wing of the show.
Should we sit down for a second?
Yeah, sure. As we make our way up these stairs of Wendy White's installation, for those of you who aren't familiar with Wendy White, she is a New York-based artist whose practice involves a number of different materials and mediums. She comes from a painting vernacular, though. I mean, I always consider her from a painting standpoint. Even this wonderful installation, which I think is really kind of a peak piece for her at the moment in her body of work, is still has so many qualities that make up, collage and painted decisions within the construct of this piece. I mean, obviously the Levi's, these are hand sewn, handmade, hand bleached, the carpet is laid in, she carves in by hand this, this signage over this, what is this material anyway? This is like
veneer panel.
Yeah, exactly. So you see all these traces of the hand within her work. I mean, the planting of the plants, and they install the rainbow above the plants to give the idea of this water source. And obviously the power of this color, this golden yellow for the platform is just like echoing sunshine, So, there's aspects of nature and the natural realm in all of the works in the show. That's really what it's about. And then, and when you see a painter organize an exhibition, you can really see their voice, I think. When I saw Amy Silman's installation of works she organized at the MoMA when they reopened, I felt like I was inside of one of her paintings. I was, when I saw Julian Schnabel put together an arrangement of paintings at the Clifford Still Museum. It was like, oh, of course, of course. I mean, that makes so much sense. And I could go on and on with these examples that are happening more often. And I'm going to put this out there because it just still makes me laugh. Is, you know, it was like COVID and Jerry Saltz got on his Instagram and he started, you know, giving advice, which is interesting. And I don't always listen to Jerry, but man, when he hits like Tyson. It's like hard. And he said, you know, well, listen, if you're complaining and you don't like this or you don't like this, well, then get up off your ass and go change it, you big babies. And I'm like, I'm not a big baby, but that's bugging me. So, you know, I got out there and like, I'm not trying, I'm doing it. It's like, you know, and in a very serious way, but I enjoy it. You know, I enjoy my own work. I'm a painter. I enjoy the process. But if I have time and the window allows and an idea or concept comes along, why not? You know, why not? Because I've seen thousands of shows and I like the shows I like. So I'm going to put together a show that I want to see and share it with someone so I can get to the point where I'm a participant now, Danny. It's not like I own this show or something. I do to a degree, but I'm like, I'm having fun. I'm participating. You know, I heard like children are loving the show. I heard that like presentations of the show are being brought to like senior citizen homes. I mean, that's the vibe, you know, and that's great. And Wendy is a super optimistic, charismatic artist. And it's reinforced by this amazing installation. I mean, we're here at night. I've never seen this install at night. It's interesting. It's different because through those windows and when the sun is streaming through here, it's just like heavenly. It fills the space with the yellow light bounces off everywhere. And I couldn't be more thrilled with this. So thank you, Wendy. If you're watching, thank you so much for this incredible production on this piece. And man, I mean, don't you think this looks great? I mean,
oh, absolutely. That space has rarely looked better.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
Yeah, it's perfect. We love it.
Also, thanks to Lazarian Gallery in Los Angeles for Wendy White. Wow, look at this wall. This wall makes me smile, man. I can't help it. It's just like too much, man. Yo, this is too much. Here, let's get a shot there of where we were, because that'll give a chance for maybe some of you at home to see, you know, a distant shot of Raymond and Anne and Torben and Matt and Inka's works there on that wall. I mean, they really
well, and we should let people know
right?
too, John, that on our website there's a terrific interactive virtual tour. People can just guide themselves around the gallery.
Yeah, check that out. That's really well done.
That's at Brattleboro.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, BrattleboroMuseum.org.
Okay, so this is my painting. This is my painting, and normally, as we've gone along to date, we would spend time just on this alone as I go forward. But I'm actually going to do this wall a little differently. I'm going to pan out a little bit to include all three of these works. This is Erik Parker's very first Tondo painting. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Erik Parker, I'm going to get back to him too. This is a work by Alexis Rockman. It's a watercolor. I was really pleased that Alexis gave us access to a watercolor. I wanted a watercolor. I think he's one of the, if not the premier watercolorist in contemporary art. I mean, watercolor is impossible. It's just, it is liquid. It's water and it's color. And Alexis has always been able to control it, even with areas that are like seemingly out of control. I know he's got his eye on that. Like the mark becomes entrenched within the overall, you know, formation of the surface in all of his works. You know, it really is like that. So I'm going to hop back here to Erik's piece. Erik and I go back. We kind of came up in New York together as young artists here and there. We we're both fathers now, and like I love hanging out with Erik, and I learn a lot from him. Both Erik and Alexis, I have a lot of respect for them. It's like being a basketball player, and you see another basketball player, and you're like, man, shit. And it's inspiring because it makes you up your game. So this, I didn't know if these paintings were going to end up together, but they found their wall. They really did. They found their wall. And when they found their wall, they found it in a way where the chapters of visuals here just really coincided in a way that became gestalt. I mean, the pieces together, I feel, are stronger than they are individually. So, we're presented again with this painting of Erik's in the middle, first Tondo. I remember the first time I ever saw this painting, it was at Mary Boone's gallery. He did an exhibition uptown, shout out to Mary Boone, of all of the Tondos. You walked in, I happened to be up there, and I walked in by myself, and I had the whole gallery to myself, and it was just this room of Tondos. And one thing I really admire about Erik is how he puts together his shows. Like, they're always really well installed. Like, they're always, I go up there to see the installation as much as I do the work. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I told him about the show. We had a really great visit at his studio. Shout out to Todd Kramer Family Collection for lending this work. I was just thrilled when we got it, and conceptually, I'll just do a touchstone on this piece, and in reference to my painting and Alexis's work to a degree, is that you look at Rousseau, those amazing jungle paintings, and you do a little research there, and you realize that Rousseau never left Paris. He never left Paris. I mean, we all grow up looking at these jungle paintings now, and then when you hear that, because you're so used to understanding them as this is a guy that went out into wherever to gain inspiration, to come back to make these paintings. No, he never left. This was just out of his head, this interface with like these grand natural themes and things. And it's interesting because I know Erik's aware of that story with Rousseau, and he's giving it really a contemporary spin and flavor with this Tondo painting. He's giving us a world. He's imagining a world. This is where Erik Parker is. This is where he's inviting us to go. And if you expand your mind a little bit, maybe you run into my leopard in that space. This is like immediate work, and I don't want to. Listen, I paint large, I paint grand, I like big paintings. I've always enjoyed that since I was a youth. I like the physical quality of being able to step into, a Rosenquist or an Al Held or, whatever. And so this is a very small painting for me, but it still has the strength. I wasn't gonna put like a big painting of mine in the show. That would have been so lame. Plus, I wanted to highlight some other people with larger works, but it holds its own. It still has that kind of raw expressionism to it that is a staple of my work. It really is what it's about. So the title of the piece is Ancient Origin, and that goes back to a running theme throughout the exhibition, in that there's an aspect of timeless nature to it. I mean, someone that was around 100 years ago would have access to this painting, and hopefully someone 100 years in the past would have access to it, and hopefully someone 100 years in the future will have access to it, depending on how the environment's doing. And then we're going to hop over back to Alexis's work, because that is a real intense and serious subject within his inquiry, is climate change and, man's effect on his environment, and the interchange throughout the ages on environmental issues and related species, varying landscapes globally. Alexis, Erik paints large paintings, Alexis paints large paintings, they're awesome paintings. But at the same time, it's like we all have different interests. And when you see a historic painting by Alexis Rockman, it's very precise, it's very controlled. Like, he's telling you a linear, not storyline, but a development of things through the workings of the imagery within the paintings. You know, I think if he could tag each image with information, he would, and maybe he will. You know, it's like data. It's like a visual organic database, and you know, he's just created a phenomenal body of work. But together, you know, you could see this fish in here, in this ocean. You know, it's like they relate to each other. There's a push-pull. If you get back from this wall a little bit, you will see compositionally, you know, my painting kind of comes to the foreground. Alexis's recedes a little bit, then it starts undulating, and it activates this wonderful, giddy movement with trippy movement in Erik's piece. I mean, it's just like, you know, I'm almost thinking maybe we should move the bench here instead of here. No, I'm just kidding, because April Gornick's painting is just like, you need to, you slow down here, you know. This read is like, okay, we're gonna slow it down. We're gonna walk it down now. You know, you come off of that wall, which is, it's an exciting wall. This is an exciting wall in a much, much different way. You know, we're starting to enter the realm of the psyche. You know, this is like a specific time of day in a place of unknown space and time. I mean, when I first saw this painting, I wasn't sure if this was intended to be a reflection from a light source, like from the moon, for instance, or if it was unfinished and it was relating to a certain type of painting process that she was trying to tell us about. And it just started getting deeper and deeper and deeper, which is what April Gornick's work does. I mean, April Gornick is my guilty pleasure. Like, she is, I've seen all of her shows. Shout out Miles McHenry again for offering up this piece, because when I heard I was going to have access to her work, and I've met April, she's lovely. She's a lovely person, but I got really thrilled with the fact that I was going to get to choose something from her, you know, and then the shows around that time, it started really expanding out, because I had Raymond's work, and Raymond's work, you know, is really about a certain type of immediacy and drawing to the ink and the paper. It's there. It's like so immediate. And there you have this illusionary, like illusory space, and this padding, again, this padding of the brush. I mean, she must have dabbed this like thousands of times, like physically. It's just mesmerizing. If you guys are able to see the show in the flesh, I highly recommend you do. I mean, it's really going to be worth it if you come in and check it out, because you're going to get to see these surfaces in a completely different light, other than you're going to be able to read it over screens or anything. So I just, you know, I step back from this. It has a real cinematographic feel to it. It's like a, you know, some kind of sweeping, silent, brooding, spatial, I'd say arrangement, but I don't know. It just feels too natural. It just feels like it organically grew out of the linen, you know? I mean, Expedition. This is like such a gorgeous painting, you know? It's like a Bertolucci film or something. It's like great. Isn't that great? Do you have any questions? Am I going too fast or slow? This is the catalog that we made for the show. It's kind of like a field guide. I based the idea on some like early catalogs by Sidney Janis and André Emmerich, and, you know, dealers of that era, galleries of that era, that would put together these kind of like historical shows and, you know, photographs of each artist. And then I spoke with each artist, and I was able to get them to write individual texts on reflections on what Expedition, the idea of Expedition, meant to them. And they really did a wonderful job. Thanks again to everybody involved with this. Danny, thank you again. The team did a great job, the print team and everything. And those are available on for purchase on the website.
At the website or here.
Yeah, so that's good. So we're going to go to this piece here. This is the most eccentric artist in the show. Hands down. I'm still trying to figure this out, which is a treat for me because I'm still discovering this artist. His name's Andy Hope 1930, formerly Andreas Hofer, but now he goes by Andy Hope 1930. And Matt Dillon brought this artist to my attention. Andy was able to participate in another group show that we formed together, and I have just been following the work. We've sent drawings back and forth overseas. He's based in Berlin, and this is part of an ongoing series titled Terminal Beach. And when I heard the title, I just went all in on the idea of a terminal beach, because the juxtaposition of the terms terminal and beach just seems so at odds, you know, and yet COVID kicked in and the lockdown kicked in, and this term terminal beach started kicking in, and it was like inescapable. And I love this form of this protruding, you know, architectural ship or vessel coming through this, like, you know, silhouette of this alien form to, I don't know, give us signage of something to come or not. And like how the signature is enhanced here on the front is like, you know, it's a statement. It's a statement. It's like the artist is telling you they are present. The artist is present here. You know, this is just enough. You know, I think that what's interesting about Andy Hope is that he's very well studied. He's a highly intellectually charged and knowledgeable artist about the history of painting and art in general. And it feels like he's a fast learner, like concrete, like actual facts learner. And then he moves on, and then he moves on, and he needs more knowledge, like he's thirsty for knowledge. And yet when he's drawing, he's not going to accept easy answers. He turns it, he twists it, you know, he rebels against it. He comes up with something new. It's like being the cook in the kitchen. He's always experimenting. I know he has a great admiration for Francis Picabia. We've talked about it. That makes a lot of sense to me. It gives me an in as an interpreter to his work. And, you know, Morrissey has that great song, The Lazy Sunbathers. And there's that line where he's talking about these lazy sunbathers that they don't give a care in the world about anything. They just want to catch those rays that are penetrating their bodies down to the core of the earth. And it's just like, you know, you imagine they're all burning on a beach. It's like Terminal Beach. And I just started laughing when I put this stuff together. But it made it really fun because it's like, wow, that's a surrealist interpretation and idea. That's actually a real historical movement. So anyway, we are going to get to a very special painting now in the show. Means a lot to me. My wife and I lent it for the exhibition. It's by one of my best friends. I just absolutely love and admire this artist's work. This is the painter André Butzer. And this is a work from 2008. It's a large watercolor on paper. I saw it in Los Angeles. I exhibited in a number of shows with André during that period, here and abroad. We became friends. We've done interviews together. We've exhibited together. I mean, he's like the one painter who I feel like just a tremendous affiliation with and respect for, in a way like, you know, tennis players when they're on the circuit. They're like, okay, I got that match with that one guy. And you're like, you're really respectful, but you're going to bring your game and you're going to heighten each other's game on the court. That's how I feel about it. And we stay in touch. And we, you know, we learn about life we share ideas about life. You know, he's a spiritual guy. He's a philosopher. He's from Germany. He did a lot of work in Germany. Then he moved to Altadena, California. He did 3 solo shows in LA. I flew out for every single opening. And the first of the 3 that I mentioned, he wasn't able to fly out. So I'm actually 1 exhibition ahead of him on his own shows in LA. So I'll see you out in LA next time. But when he was in Altadena, and he's since relocated back to Berlin, there's a mountain behind his home. And he would go and he would climb the mountain, and he would take photographs and text them to me. And I went there and I smelled the air, and you know, he picked a lemon from the tree and gave it to me. I brought it back to New York on the plane and gave it to my daughter, the lemon from the lemon tree. There's just this kind of holy, I'll use that word. I mean, there's like a holiness to him and a vibe to him and a trusting that I just really, you know, since day one, he was like a day one with that. And so one day he was doing a show, I think with Max Hetzler, like 10 years ago or something like that. And he said, I want to do a show in conjunction with my show of, like, you know, other painters and stuff here. Will you send a painting over? And I said, yeah, I'd be glad to. You know, it'll be off-site. It'll be somewhere else. And so I sent him a piece. He enjoyed it. It went well. And then he was coming to do a show at Metro Pictures and here in New York. And he came up with the idea, like, this would be a good thing to do. Let's pair another. So will you help me with this in New York? And I said, yeah, I would be happy to do this. Let's do this. And we took on an alias. I think I was Rihanna and he was, I forget who he was. It was a crazy thing. I should know that, but I'll go figure that out. And it was some shows ago now, because it's grown, it's mushroomed, it really has. And so we did that one alias. We found like a really old, gnarly, it was almost like a crack den on the Lower East Side. And we left it raw like that. And painters were coming in from Berlin, and there were artists from New York. Some of them were that a couple, Wendy was in the show, just a couple early ones like that. And Ouattara, who we'll get to, was in that show. And so André flew over. That was our first experience in doing that. And we would not be here today. I would not be talking to you all, would not be presenting this work. I wouldn't get a chance to share these other artists in this way if it wasn't for André inviting me on to those early projects. So André, brother, if you're watching, thank you so much. I mean, we can talk about the piece. It's a Nazaheim painting. It's from the N series. And it's a grouping from, again, a very strong period of Butzer's work involving these kind of buoyant, robust figures that kind of have echoes of Germanic redcoat history, and yet not. It's like also maybe a woman coming home from the marketplace. I mean, I don't do a singular read on something. It doesn't have to stay in a certain type of box. It can move. It can move into other areas. I mean, what is that mark on that house? Is that something that should be taken as a sign of danger? I mean, it's kind of a brutish way of making an N, and that color is really entrenched in there, but in a gorgeous way. It's like the red has a sheen to it within the madness. It's almost like a blood. And yet at the same time, you know, it could be a beautiful type of decorative element to a type of architecture with this green expansion of nature. And yet everything's vibrating because he has such an expressive mannerism to his mark making. I mean, look at this watercolor. This is what I was saying in reference to Alexis Rockman's watercolor. I mean, that is a different method of painting. This goes into a Germanic expressionism, and I think, in my humble opinion, that André Butzer is the strongest painter in Germany under the age of 50. There, that's a powerful statement. I'm a little biased, but I actually believe that. Okay, now we're going to settle down. We're going to take it down again, but in a nice way. And I like with this John McAllister painting how we kind of pick up echoes of the coloration back on the wall with Erik and my painting. because there is a lot of color in the show. You know, it's kind of a colorist thing too. And as I'm walking through tonight, I'm just kind of realizing more and more on a deeper level, you know? I mean, André and I did an interview with Flash Art for him, and the title of the piece is I Will Always Be a Colorist. And it's like, wow, okay, I'm gonna put the color out in front of everything. That's a real painter's thing to say. That's the language of the medium, right? So with John McAllister, he's based in Massachusetts. We're back to echoes of a type of poetical space similar to things at the beginning of the exhibition in works like Inka. And then also over here with April's work. And we pick it up again in John. And it's almost like, you know what, man, I'm starting to feel like it's the landscape of a place. Maybe it's here in Vermont. I don't know. I mean, there are different approaches to the treatments, but you know, it's a different type of day. It's a different type of light, you know, and yet maybe it's the same space. It's similar size, a little larger than Inka's, and yet the compositions kind of echo each other. He wrote a fantastic piece in the catalog, his artist statement, very poetic, you know, lots of descriptions in terms of sounds and echoes of the wind that's made through the rustling of the trees and the leaves. And, you know, I mean, what kind of crickets live in this type of landscape, or butterflies? I mean, it's just alive. It's so beautiful. I love the surface treatment. It's optical. I mean, you don't have to take ayahuasca to appreciate it. It's its own ayahuasca, whatever that is. And I think that it's a really great work. He's very consistent as a colorist. A lot of the works tend to be landscape oriented like this, and yet he will go large. He's made screens that are freestanding within his exhibitions. He'll display those as well. And it was wonderful that he could join us for the opening, right, and the dinner. And shout out to everyone at the museum again for helping put on such a great event. I mean, that was a beautiful night. Everybody had a wonderful time. And we can raise a glass to it with this piece, which we'll end on, which is by the...
Well, we're going to have one more to mention after this.
What are we going to do?
We're going to show Donald's.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Physically, from this area of the gallery, we're going to end on this piece. And this is a work by Ouattara Watts. Ouattara I've known for several decades. We've shown together. He's from the Ivory Coast originally. He's a tremendous painter. He paints large. He, you know, references symbols of Africa and the cosmos. You know, he's like a pictorial abstractionist. And when we started out at the beginning of the tour, we began with Michael Kagan's painting, you know, and that was the figure encapsulated within this reflective helmet. Okay, now we're at the end of the show, and we're leaving with this charm. You know, this is a charm to me. This is like a spiritual visitation that stays with us, that we take with us. It's almost like the way the treatment of the yellow is within the framework of this form. It's like he's looking through a translucent veil of light with this piercing blue. I mean, the specifics are placed again on the eyes. It's not so much drawn out through this surface, but directly to the corners where the red is like this. So we have these points of reference to the edges and to the center points, and it kind of radiates out through this light, which to me also echoes Wendy's piece and the yellow. And there's an optimism to this, you know, and Ouattara is one of those painters, like, I like to vocalize the things, you know, and Ouattara doesn't have to do that, you know. He's a part of the cosmos, you know. His abstraction, his pictorial language is its own cosmos. And if you go to the museum, if you're in New York, if you happen to be in the New York area and you can make it by the Museum of Modern Art, he has a phenomenal painting on the second floor right now, a really large piece. that'll give you an idea of his sense of scale. This is a wonderful work on paper, but boy, when you get a hold of one of the large paintings, it becomes a different read. So if you can check that out. Raymond Pettibone also has two walls of cloud arrangements of drawings at the MoMA as well. So, you know, these artists are all active. They're super serious. A lot of them have been showing for years, and some are beginning, but it's all in very prominent forums. And to have them all together under your roof is just, man, this has been great. This is just.
Do you want to read? Do you want to read what Ouattara said about his painting? So you asked each of them to say what the concept of expedition means to them.
Yeah, right. Yeah. To their their individual practice.
Yeah.
And okay, you're the one that set the field guide in my hand here. So yeah. I mean, if you want to come in and maybe take a shot of the actual piece, and then I'll read to you what Wataru wrote. His words are, "My vision is not limited to a country or a continent. It goes beyond borders and everything that can be found on a map. I paint the cosmos." And there you have it. There you have it. Special thanks to the Eileen Kaminsky Family Foundation for lending Ouattara's work and my painting as well. Thank you to you all for your time. Danny?
So John, do you want to mention about the sculpture outside?
Yeah, I do.
So do that, and if you want to show an image as well.
So it's dark outside right now, but there is a wonderful sculpture by the artist Donald Batchelor that's installed in front of the museum. If you want to bring it over here, you can catch a shot of this image. This is a large bronze walking figure by Donald, and many of you watching will know Donald as primarily a painter. I mean, he's one of his generation's greatest painters, and we go back years. We've been friends a long, long time. He travels the world. He's traveling all the time. I mean, we're in like a little bit of a post-COVID movement, but I knew right away that he would be a perfect inclusion for this. And so in thinking about it, I was, originally I had a painting in mind. It was going to be like an iconic foot, just like boom, like there was a footprint, which would have been great. But then all of a sudden, I'd recall the trip to Spencertown, to his estate, and the sculpture that was out on the grounds of the walking figure. And I said to myself, why not, man? That's the one. That's what we get. And we hooked it up. So thanks to Donald, thanks again to the install team. We had it trucked out, we had the crane, we put it all together. It's out front. For those of you who can stop by and see the exhibition, you're going to love it. People really enjoy it. And thank you to Donald for the contribution.
You know how it reads? It reads like that's the guy starting off on an expedition.
Oh, yeah.
From in the museum.
It's interesting because I remember seeing the armature of that in his studio. I was visiting the studio and I was looking at these paintings, but then off to the side, there was this large, awkward, like stick paper mache sculpture. And I just like, I was thinking to myself, I gotta keep an eye on this. There's something going on over here. And like, eventually it became the mold for, the bronze out front. And it's just fantastic. So everything came together, and thank you.
So you've been giving us all these shout outs. Let me just thank you again. This has been a phenomenal experience for us to have all this work here in our museum.
Thank you.
And such a pleasure working with you on putting it all together. You're so attentive to detail and also keep the big picture in mind. And you just have such a huge heart and spirit about it all. And it's really been a joy for all of us.
Thank you.
I thank you.
Thank you.
So Kirsten, I don't know if anybody's chimed in with any questions or comments, but if so, we could see if John has anything more to say.
Sure. I'm here.
We have a comment from Charlie.
Oh yeah, it was when you were talking about the watercolor, Charlie offered up a quote from John Singer Sargent: "Painting in watercolor is like trying to paint in the middle of an emergency."
Oh, well, let's go over here, because Alexis, the move in this piece, there's always kind of one bit of scholarly twist somewhere in his work. And the scholarly twist happens right here in this cross section here of maybe a stomach, like things that this fish had eaten. And can you repeat that quote by Sargent again?
Yeah. Painting in watercolor is like trying to paint in the middle of an emergency.
Well, that's it. I mean, look at that. That just like echoes that perfectly. But I mean, you know what? That's really it.
Yeah.
I mean, if my watercolor was having a problem, I would want to get Alexis on the horn and get over there and like to the repairs. Like, you know what I mean? That's that control, you know?
It's interesting what you're saying about like the scientific historical elements as well. If I remember correctly, maybe it's something he mentions in his statement in the catalog. I think Alexis essentially grew up at the Museum of Natural History,
Well, grab the catalog. Let's read it. It's not a long quote, but I know what you're referring to. And it is a nice statement.
As a child, I wandered the endless halls of the American Museum of Natural History several times a month. My mother was employed as Margaret Mead's secretary, and I would often wait in the museum after school for her to finish work. While waiting, I would embark on my own expeditions, traveling to far-off lands like the Amazon or New Guinea, or traveling through time in the dinosaur halls. Today, I'm lucky enough to go to places like these, Madagascar, Tasmania, and the Amazon, to celebrate and commemorate the natural world's past, present, and future. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Yeah. And honestly, the diversity of statements that the artists supplied, and so many people have noted how being able to read the statements and the thoughts that these artists have, related to this concept of expedition, and see the work has provided them with such a richer experience.
That's great.
And insight into
into
the concept.
You know, it functions as a tool during the exhibition, and it functions as a tool after the exhibition. You know, I mean, it's important. It's a document. It's a good document. So,
was there something else, Kirsten? Oh no, Charlie's
sense of humor.
Yeah. It was when you were talking about Rousseau. He said, yeah, that gypsy would have been toast in real life, given the look on that leopard. I think talking about Rousseau.
Yeah.
Anyway.
For sure. I mean, I just think that those paintings are phenomenal. I think that there is a mystery. I mean, what was the word?
Oh, I see. No, you were talking about how you were so surprised to learn that Rousseau never left Paris, never actually went into the jungle.
Yeah.
Charlie's saying, yeah, Rousseau would have been toast in the jungle, given the look on that leopard.
I have no doubt about it. And that's actually, I'm glad that he made that comment, because, you know, this is the one image that if this one painting, if the image was real and stepped out into the plane of the gallery, I mean, we would be terrified. You would be dead. Nothing else has that. So, but that's just part of it. Yeah, I don't know. You know what? That's why I love Butzer so much, is because it's formidable, man. Look at that. The paintings are across from each other.
No,
I get to live with that painting, so I've seen it a lot.
Amazing.
I love it. I'm very comfortable with
if that creature stepped into the gallery, that would be a little.
I mean, it's just, but you know what you're picking up on? You're picking up more on the process than the image, because it's the way. It's the way the marks are painted, man. It's like, look at that, man. Look, it's like a hatchet attack. It's just like, it's amazing. Look at that painting. That is like I don't want that area painted like the Rockman because it's watercolor. I want this painted like this because it's the Butzer. And if you look up close with the camera, you'll see the underdrawing, you know, the gesture of the drawing. And I have to say, this is a very important thing, is that drawing is a core element within the majority of these artists' practice. Like they can all draw. They're like, you know, they understand drawn painting, you know? And the structure. I mean, all of the paintings have a lot of structure to them. You know, they're not. We go back to Richard Jacobs. You know, being maybe the only quasi-abstraction in the show. It's like everything else has this dance between material and image. You know, but it's like I can trust the space. Like I can put my foot down in the spaces, and then I can put my next foot down and feel solid in the space. You're not gonna, you know, nothing's half-assed. It's like finished.
Right.
It's real. You know, it's like there's trust there. You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's exciting.
John, thank you again. Welcome back to Vermont.
Thank you.
Oh, there's something else? Okay.
Charlie, shout out Charlie.
Charlie, you should have just been here in person.
Yeah.
Serious question. Dude, referring to you, dude clearly loves rock and roll. I want to know how he relates the paintings to rock. The mark making is the sound of the band. The nominal subject matter are the lyrics.
It's a good question. It's true. You know, I like hip hop too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know, I mean, he said lyrics. So,
yeah.
And I got lyrics to go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you love opera too.
I love opera. Opera's great. But, you know, rap and opera are very similar things. I don't know. I think those are the genres of music I like the most, rap and opera.
Charlie says he dodged it.
He says you dodged it. Fair enough.
It was a good dodge.
Yeah, it was. So I just want to mention a couple things. Thank you again, John, of course. Thank you, Kirsten, and Tim, who's behind the camera here. Thank you all for helping to make this possible tonight. And thanks to everyone who tuned in. Few things for you to know. September 16th, we have a Zoom presentation where we have a really cool music historian. I think he's at Syracuse. He's a professor at Syracuse who's going to give a music history presentation on Lollapalooza and the rise of alternative rock in the 90s, which we're doing by way of offering a little more context for this show, because as John was mentioning at the beginning, as he mentioned in his essay, a big part of how he was influenced, of how he thinks about this activity of organizing these shows comes from the early days of Lollapalooza and Perry Farrell organizing as a participant.
Yeah, this actually, ironically, it's the 30th anniversary year of the festival. And so that's a cool thing that the museum put together. When you told me about it, I was like, yeah, that sounds
I can't wait for that.
You know, it's really great. Yeah,
that'll be fun. The show is up, this show, the 4 or 5 other shows we also have up are up till October 11th. I'll second what John said, which is come see the work in person if you possibly can. We're open Wednesday through Sunday, 10 to 4. We're during normal gallery hours, we're requiring masks again, but you know, that's all right. We're all used to that, right? So we'd love to have you come be here in person. And I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else. For now. Yeah. Oh, I know what. One other thing. All of this was being recorded, and that recording will be posted on our website within the next day or two. So if you know anyone who might be interested and you want to share it, you can find it there and share it with them. And Kirsten's reminding me that it's really important for me to remind you all that if you appreciate this kind of free programming that we've been doing and are willing to make a donation to the museum to help support it, that's kind of how we get by here. We rely on your generosity. And so you can make a donation of any amount to the museum at brattleboromuseum.org, and we'll be exceedingly grateful for that. So thank you. Stay safe, be well, be kind to one another, and hope to see you in person soon. Good night.
Thank you.